Alrighty, this is We the People News. Not attorney, not giving legal advice. Educational purposes only. Okay, no more, no less. Take it with a grain of salt. Hearsays. Well, a little bit of this I actually got facts I have first-hand knowledge of. And a little bit towards the end of this video. So going to talk about how the courts kind of don't dismiss the case, but let it linger. So they don't put it in a private or the public. They kind of keep it and kick it off to the side, and it just disappears. And you don't never hear from them again. If you do, it could be, sneak up on you after they investigate how to actually treat you. Alright, let's go.
Wait for a night that you're suffering from insomnia, read the rest if you like. But that right there says it all. So what's wrong with this picture? So then I went, well, let's go to the Constitution. So I went to the Constitution. What authority does so-called government have? Come to find out, we the people are the government. Right. Okay. But, side conversation. But it was like, wait a minute. Okay, so what authority do they have? Well, Article 1, Section 8, commercial. Well, but they say police powers. This is into my studies and whatnot. Well, they say traffic falls under police powers. Well, wait a minute. What else is there? Well, besides the regulating commercial activity, civil and criminal. That's where police powers come in. Who's the guy that delivers the subpoena for a civil case? Well, that's a cop. Sheriff's deputy or marshal. Okay, they're doing the delivery. Okay, so they're part of that process. Well, what's the other one? Crimes. Well, what other type is there? Well, no, you only get two in this country, civil or criminal. If it's not civil, it's criminal. Well, okay, so what all applies? Well, in a crime, because let's face it, a traffic ticket, if it's not civil, there's only 5 jurisdictions in the country that are where it's civil. So now you're going to break down the elements of a contract.
Well, there we go. He's got to make money somehow, right? One thing about my videos you got to appreciate. If it wasn't for them, you wouldn't have commercials. I'm not making anything off these things. So, all right, we should be getting close.
It's remarkable. And I always tell everybody, look at the elements of everything. I don't care if it's a tort. I don't care if it's a crime. Whatever it is, what are the elements of what you're being accused of? Right. And so I was like, well, there's only 2 cases, criminal and civil. Well, we know this, because all you got to do is ask in court, is this civil or criminal? Don't go in there like you're a genius. Ask questions. And that's where I apply the Socratic method, which, having talked to Mark Stevens and followed what he was saying, it makes the most sense, because how do you bring out the truth? Through questions. Right. You don't ever have to argue. You start making assertions, well, now you got to start proving. Stay away from presumptions, assumptions, assertions. Start asking questions.
That's what Joshua did.
That's right. And that's exactly what. Did the Father not say this? Is it not written the prophet Isaiah said that? Right. Okay, questions. It will bring out the truth. Well,
there you go, people. So I'm not the only one talking about this. Now, this being said, both these men up here has been going through the courts. They call it pro se. Okay? And they've been learning the civil rules of procedure, criminal rules of procedure, and all this kind of stuff. They apply it because, the sovereign citizen thing. So they actually go by the books of the rules and regulations and all that through the court system. And because you're pro se, they play stupid games. First-hand knowledge of it.
Of course, testing that in court, when you start asking the judge, because the judge always stands up for the prosecution. The prosecution's standing there with his hands in his pockets, so the judge picks up, well, you start asking the questions. Well, and then one of the things that I started learning was, the difference between administrative courts and judicial courts, or administrative law judges and judicial officers. World of difference.
Absolutely.
And so, some of the traffic that I got into, fighting the tickets and whatnot. So, what are the procedures? So what I do is first thing I file for, I get the ticket, first thing I file is for discovery. I want to know because, hey, you're charging me with a crime. A crime. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm facing a crime. So I don't care how you got there. You're charging me with a crime. I'm in a criminal court. Mm-hmm. Okay, now what's being applied? Administrative procedure, common law. What are we doing? That's where questions come in. Mm-hmm. And so when I submit,
And the short version of that, when he's asking these questions, really he's challenged jurisdiction. But he's making it kind of like a snake. He's slithering in there, challenging jurisdiction. But he is challenging jurisdiction, but in a different type of way.
The discovery and I don't get any discovery back, or if I get, they'll send you copies of the tickets and maybe the dash cam and the body cam. Yeah. Okay, well, maybe. Okay. But if what does the body cam and the dash cam show? Well, shows us having a conversation on the side of the road. Well, that's not a crime. That's not evidence of a crime. Well, what about the ticket itself? Well, that's not anything either. There's nothing supporting it. And that's where I started learning. It's like, okay, let's start breaking down the elements of what's on this accusation. Well, then you're looking at it going, well, there's nothing on there that even has any evidence of anything on it. Okay, so what supporting document is required? Well, you've got to have a verified complaint, and depending on your statute of limitations, that's where I learned, and it came right from our own Attorney General that defined where a prosecution starts. The accusation starts the prosecution, and once a verified complaint is filed, and they've got 2 years to do it, then
and a verified complaint
is under oath.
Is under oath and signed by not the officer.
No.
It has to be someone got injured
Correct.
in what you did, and they sign an affidavit saying you've injured me.
Under the elements of a crime, actus reus, mens rea, proximate cause, okay, there must be an injured party. Okay, somebody must have suffered a loss or harm. Okay, well, they always say, well, it's the state versus you. Well, okay, under the law agency, who's the state representing? Now, if the officer is representing the state, well, then what property damage did I cause? Because there might be state-managed property. And notice I said state-managed and not owned. Mm-hmm. State don't own anything. The people own it. Right. Okay, so okay, well, if I did property damage, well, then, because if you have evidence and what I owe, hey, I'll pay it and go on down the road. I'll pay whatever, and, but nothing ever comes up. And of course, we know, okay, all we did was pull over. There's nobody harmed. There's no damage. None of that occurs. But it's still a crime. Okay, well.
It's the potential you could have possibly harmed someone.
Okay.
And it's our job to protect you.
Well, that's right.
Which is not true. They have no duty to protect you.
No, absolutely not. They have to protect the general public.
Right.
Well, if you actually read the laws on protecting the general public, it always says that somebody has to be put in jeopardy of life or limb. Well, there's your complaining party. Okay, you may not have actually injured them, but you have to put it. But see, they don't ever write you up for that. That would be reckless driving, which is a crime. Mm-hmm. And that's where looking at due process. Okay, even on the commercial side, it still applies. Okay, because it still falls under civil and criminal. And when you understand those elements, then it's like either you have the evidence or you don't. Now, 99% of the cases, they dropped it because it's like, but see, you'll never find evidence that they dropped it. They did docket it, and it goes away.
Right.
You don't hear from them.
You just quit hearing from them.
You quit hearing from them. Because, and I don't think I can figure, well, they don't want that information. Oh, they just don't want to deal with it. Well, whatever the case, leave me alone.
Right.
Okay, I haven't harmed them. I'm not out committing crimes. Okay, now, for those that are out committing crimes, well, good luck. Okay, but for those of us that, no, we're law-abiding.
And yes, they do that. Now, when you get into real deep, his is traffic, so it's fairly simple. They just kind of, they cannot admit when they're wrong. Okay? Which makes them dishonorable. Honorable people, when they do a wrong, they give remedy. But when they do wrong, they won't give remedy. So therefore, they stay in dishonor. And then when the courts are completely just decide to ignore it, well, where's the remedy? The courts are still acting in dishonor. So we got to get in there and figure these little steps out. And sometimes you may want to try it just to see more paperwork for education. You know, poke the bear. Wait a minute. This is still outstanding. I want this dismissed with prejudice, but this is not going to linger over my head for 20 years, people. We're going to settle the matter. Now, is this court acting in dishonor, or is this court acting in honor? Because this over here, lingering and not giving any type of remedy, is in a dishonorable court. So what do we need to do to proceed forward in said case?
You know, law abiding. We're loving our neighbor. We're not harming them. We're not intentionally harming them, because and that's where, when people understand the police powers. Well, you can use a motor vehicle or an automobile, and there is a difference, by the way,
In every state, it's a different term.
well,
Yeah.
what opened my eyes up to that term was motor vehicle and automobile, because in insurance it's called an automobile. If you're required to have a commercial policy, it's now a motor vehicle.
Right.
So I was like, okay, that'll kind of open my eyes. Well, another thing,
Yeah, read your insurance and see what it says. Which category is that insurance in?
that I allude back to as well is there was a truck stop I managed in Texas. Okay, and
And wouldn't the difference between those terms be a duty of the city to train their officers on
Well,
the difference?
well,
right?
but that's not the game.
I get it.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
That doesn't make
Isn't
money.
it their duty to?
It is their duty. Okay, so, but one of the things that sparked my interest, because I always remember back when I managed the truck stop, is you have the driver's side and you have the traveler's side. Everybody in the truck stop knows, and you can go into any truck stop, I don't know where, and ask them where's the traveler's side and where's the driver's side, because everybody knows there's a difference. You have drivers, which is a profession, and you have travelers. Everybody in the truck stop knows the difference.
That's right.
And so that started getting me scratching.
And I brought that up to y'all's attention on a video a while back. Right, me being a truck driver, I was a driver. I was on the driver's side, driver's lounge and all that. But the other side was travelers. There was a distinction, and there is a distinction, even in a truck stop. And how cops can't put this 2 to 2 together, and how some of y'all cannot put 2 and 2 together. Just saying.
Why there's definitely a distinction there, and what is the distinction? Well, there is a legal distinction, and so in my journeys, that's where I started learning. It's like, well, okay, I see everybody going down all these paths trying different things, but what does it all boil down to? Well, it all comes down to two things: civil, criminal, and what are the elements thereof, and what's the evidence supporting it? Well, if there's no evidence of a crime, what case do you have? See, but what they try to do, because they want that money, that's when they come up with all these different arguments. Well, the courts rejected that. This is just the way it is, or whatever they want to come up with. Oh, okay, that's fine.
And they have to make it criminal, otherwise they couldn't haul you into court,
Right.
put you in jail,
Correct.
and then which is called basically due process.
Right.
And for those of you out there, there's only 4 countries in the world that have due process. Put them in the description if you know.
Absolutely. So so that's where. But see, what they try to do, like I said, they just keep running their mouth, but they never come up with any evidence. And I've got one going on right now where I've got a writ of prohibition into a higher court, and all I'm asking for is the evidence. Okay, the lower court has provided no evidence. Somebody step in, and how can we keep? I mean, what are we going to trial for? What are you going to present? Because if I have to go to trial, the only thing I'm going to have, where's your evidence?
Right.
You either have it or you don't. Okay, you either have a harm party or you don't, because under the Sixth Amendment guarantee, the Confrontation Clause, I've got a right to face my accuser. Please point them out, because I'll make this whole thing go away. I'll cut them a check for their loss and call it a day. I don't want to be out there harming anybody.
Right.
Well, most people are like that.
Right.
Okay. Unfortunately, they can reach out and say, well, if anybody watches YouTube for any period of time, these officers are on there with their own channels talking. Oh, we can just sit behind you and we can find something. Well, okay, if you're going to find something, then walk around and write it up. Bring your accusations and your proof with you.
Right.
I want to know how the statutes and codes apply, because I do know there's a difference. Okay, between private laws and public laws. I know the difference between statutes and codes and who they apply to, and that's what you start, coming to realize that the statutes and codes are for the management of government. It's got nothing to do
You're
with the
just a
people.
sovereign citizen.
Well,
That's
yeah.
what that is.
Yeah, well, that oxymoron. But of course, sovereign citizens call it an oxymoron.
Right.
But I digress. But if people are trying to wrap,
All right. It's kind of interesting how they brought that in with my previous videos. Timing is everything. We're at the 1560 mile mark. These will be the People News. Till next time. Bye, y'all.